what really happened on the Hantavirus cruise ship. Imagine opening an old shed, grabbing a broom, sweeping the floor, and inhaling dust that slowly destroys your lungs from the inside. Not because of poison, not because of chemicals, but because of a virus hiding in mouse droppings. This is Hantavirus, and one of the deadliest viruses on Earth. Some strains kill up to 40–50% of infected people. For comparison, COVID's mortality rate was dramatically lower. But what's terrifying scientists right now is that in 2026, the world is watching the largest hantavirus scare in years unfold on a luxury expedition cruise ship called MV Hondius. The outbreak began during an Antarctic expedition cruise departing from Argentina. On board were passengers and crew from 23 different countries. After several days at sea, people started developing strange flu-like symptoms: high fever, intense muscle pain, coughing, severe fatigue. Then came the horrifying part: acute lung failure. Several passengers died during the voyage itself. The ship effectively turned into a floating quarantine zone. The first passenger died on April 11 after being evacuated to St. Helena Island. His wife later disembarked in Johannesburg and died 2 days later in hospital. Another passenger also died shortly after. By mid-May, at least 11 confirmed cases of Andes hantavirus had been linked to the ship. And that detail matters because Andes is not a normal hantavirus strain. It's the only known hantavirus capable of spreading from human to human. That single fact changed everything. Nearly all other hantaviruses spread only from rodents to humans. Andes is different. Scientists believe it can spread through prolonged close contact, respiratory secretions, and shared enclosed spaces. That's exactly why global health agencies reacted so aggressively to the situation aboard the MV Hondius. When the ship approached Tenerife in the Canary Islands, authorities initially refused to let it dock. Spanish officials feared a potential outbreak on the islands themselves, but after negotiations involving the WHO and international health authorities, the ship was finally allowed to enter port. Passengers were removed in small controlled groups using separate transport boats. Some were seen wearing masks and protective suits while carrying only minimal belongings. Then came the global containment operation. Passengers were scattered across multiple countries under strict medical supervision. 17 Americans and 1 British citizen were flown to the United States aboard a specialized medical evacuation flight. They were transferred directly to the National Quarantine Unit at the University of Nebraska, the same high-security isolation facility previously used for Ebola patients. Some passengers were transported in sealed biocontainment pods. One person tested positive for Andes virus during transport, while another already showed symptoms. Right now, the CDC is monitoring at least 41 potentially exposed individuals. Some remain in quarantine facilities in Nebraska and Atlanta. Others have been allowed home under strict isolation orders and daily medical monitoring for up to 42 days, the maximum incubation period associated with Andes hantavirus. Several individuals were advised not to use public transportation or attend crowded areas under any circumstances. The United Kingdom evacuated 22 passengers and placed them in Arawi Park Hospital, the same quarantine facility used during COVID and Ebola scares. After several days of controlled observation, they were allowed to return home under mandatory 45-day isolation requirements. Australia responded even more aggressively. 6 passengers were transported aboard military aircraft to RAAF Pierce Air Base and isolated inside the Bullsbrook Quarantine Centre, the facility rarely used since the COVID pandemic years. Even though initial tests came back negative, authorities refused to take chances. Meanwhile, additional scares started appearing across multiple countries. One evacuated passenger in France reportedly developed symptoms after returning home. Another positive case was detected in Spain. Contact tracing operations were launched in Scotland, Germany, Switzerland, and South Africa, involving everyone who may have interacted with passengers from the ship. And this is the part truly frightening virologists. Current WHO and ECDC investigations suggest that one passenger likely contracted Andes hantavirus before boarding the ship, possibly somewhere in Argentina or Chile where the virus naturally circulates among wild rodents. But once aboard the vessel, the virus appears to have spread between people. The cruise ship essentially became the perfect transmission environment. Enclosed air, shared dining areas, constant proximity, and weeks of uninterrupted human contact. Some researchers are already calling the MV Hondius incident a rehearsal for the next pandemic, because for the first time in years, The world may have witnessed sustained international spread of a highly lethal hantavirus strain involving travelers from dozens of countries. One preliminary scientific analysis even estimated the onboard reproduction rate at roughly 2.7, high enough for an outbreak to sustain itself under the right conditions. So why is hantavirus so deadly? Because it attacks blood vessels. The virus makes capillaries leak fluid directly into lung tissue. Victims essentially drown internally as their lungs fill with fluid. Blood pressure collapses, the heart strains to compensate. In severe cases, patients can die within hours after respiratory failure begins. What makes it even more dangerous is how normal the early symptoms seem. Fever, chills, headache, muscle, pain, nausea, dry cough. Most people initially assume they have the flu, then suddenly their condition crashes. That's why the mortality rate of Andes hantavirus is estimated around 35%. And there's still no specific cure. No universal antiviral treatment. Doctors can only support the body while it fights the infection. Oxygen therapy, ventilators, blood pressure stabilization, intensive care. If the immune system loses the battle, the patient dies. But the most disturbing part of the entire story is how ordinary the original source can be. Hantaviruses have existed around humans for decades inside rats, mice, and wild rodents. You can become infected while cleaning a garage, opening a cabin after winter, sweeping a warehouse, sleeping in an abandoned building. Once dried rodent droppings turn into airborne dust, the virus can enter directly through the lungs. That's exactly why scientists remain so uneasy right now. Because Andes hantavirus has already proven one terrifying possibility. Hantaviruses can adapt to human transmission. Right now it's limited. Right now it requires close contact. But if a future mutation ever makes transmission easier, humanity could face a respiratory virus with a mortality rate measured not in fractions of a percent, but in tens of percent. And that's why the MV Hondius outbreak is no longer being treated as just another strange cruise ship incident. For many scientists, it's a warning, a glimpse at how close humanity already lives to viruses we still barely understand.